Sonic Rush Adventure, the sequel to Sonic Rush, and what I think is one of the most overlooked Sonic games of all time. Like, I almost never hear anyone talk about this game, like, ever. So grab your favorite cat, some sunscreen, and let's get ready for a new venture. But anyways, Sonic and Tails are looking for the One Piece or whatever when they get swept up by a tornado or a cyclone. Yeah, whatever it is. And they wake up stranded on some random island where they meet this random raccoon girl. So we befriend Marine, who's kind of annoying, and we get introduced to the material system in this game. And materials are what you use to build boats so you can move around the various islands of the game, and you collect these materials after you beat stages. And speaking of levels, let's talk about this game's gameplay. The control scheme is essentially the same way it was in the first game, with the boost and the trick system returning, and there are also some new mechanics introduced. Like in some stages there are some obstacles that you can fling yourself over, and executing this perfectly will allow you to reach some alternate routes. And in some levels there are segments where you will enter a sequence of quick time events, and successfully pulling these off will give you a higher score and fill up your boost meter. And by the way, you do want to get that higher score, because the higher you score in these levels, the more materials the game will give you, with an S rank giving you the most. And this makes this the first Sonic game to actually make me feel motivated to get an S rank. So get on this game. So the gameplay is good, but obviously it's only as good as the levels are, and the levels in this game are pretty fun. Like most Sonic games, each level has its own unique gimmick, and since this game is pretty much ocean themed, each level has a tropical aesthetic, with some levels having some pirate elements in them, and visually it makes the levels in this game really stand out, like Coral Cave being a cave at the bottom of the ocean, with some cool ass minecarts for some reason. Who put these here? And Haunted Ship, where you run around a bunch of abandoned ships, and it's a pretty spooky level. And there's also Sky Babylon, which takes place on the ruins of a floating city with this beautiful green sky background. And some vehicles do need a lot of materials, so it does provide an incentive to go back and replay a lot of the levels, as each stage gives you a different type of material. And speaking of the vehicles, each vehicle you can build in this game has its own different purpose, like the Wave Cyclone being the first one you get, which lets you travel short distances really quickly, and the Deep Typhoon, which is a submarine that lets you travel underwater. And each vehicle has its own little mini game that you have to play while you're using it, and I have to admit, it does get kind of tiring after a while, because you do have to use these things a lot, and sometimes you kind of feel like it'd just be easier if you had a simple menu, but maybe that's just me being lazy. But no, seriously, sailing is a big part of this game. It's the main method you have to use to unlock new levels and progress through the story, which is a cool idea, and it's really good for immersioning you in this world, but sometimes it feels like you're actually spending more time sailing than you are actually playing the levels of the game, which again, it's a cool idea, but sometimes it does kind of feel like it's just there to pad out the game. That's just my opinion though. And before I forget, let's talk about this game's music. Unfortunately, Hideki Naganuma did not return to make this game's soundtrack, so we don't get to hear more of his signature funky beats. That doesn't mean that this game's music is bad though, not in any way, as this game's soundtrack has a very different tone to match the tropical aesthetic of it, and it makes for a pretty solid Sonic soundtrack, especially with the main theme of this game being so infectiously catchy that you just can't stop. So after some running around, the team ends up at this cave where they stumble upon this group of pirate robots. Yeah, that's not obviously leading to anything. Anyways, these guys are here to get this special scepter thing when out of fucking nowhere.
Hey yo, what the fuck? Woo! Superhero landing!
Yes, sir. Our favorite purple cat returns. The other one. And our reunion gets interrupted by a boss fight. And I guess I should talk about the boss fights in this game, but just a heads up, I don't really know what went wrong, but whenever I would try to play any boss fight, this would happen, and I just could not get it fixed, so I'm gonna be using gameplay from this person. Shout out to them. But yeah, the boss fights in this game are actually really good. These are something that I definitely say were improved from the first game, and each and every one of them are completely unique. Like this one where you basically have to beat it at tetherball, and this one where you have to fight a big ass pirate mech, and this one where you have to go inside of a big ass fucking metal whale, and you have to get through this platforming section before you blow up. Yeah, the bosses in this game are really good, and a big improvement from Rush. So we beat the boss, and unfortunately the pirates get away with the Jewel Scepter, which is your usual planet-busting magic item. And then we find out, oh shit, this isn't our universe. Yeah, this whole time we've been in Blaze's universe, which is pretty cool because we spent the entirety of the first game in Sonic's world, and now we finally get the opportunity to explore the Soul Dimension, and it adds some really nice world building. So Blaze joins the team once again, and of course that means we can play as her again. And for the most part, Blaze's gameplay is pretty much exactly the way it was in the first game, and she retains her floating ability and her boost, with the only new mechanics being added to her are just the same mechanics that were added to Sonic. Something I noticed that was unique to her though is her immunity to fire, which makes her super helpful for some specific stages, but for the most part she's pretty much the same, which isn't a bad thing because she was already pretty fun to use to begin with. So then we head back to the hub world, and yes, this game has a hub world, where you can walk around your little island, and you can go to the port of whichever vehicle you want to use, and you can also walk around what I think is Marine's little house. It's kinda cute, and if you talk to Marine, she'll give you missions you can complete for different rewards. And the way to unlock more of these missions is to talk to the NPCs around the island, and talking to this guy in particular is really important, because he will give you the missions to unlock the Soul Emeralds. Yeah, just like the first game, to unlock the true ending of the game, you have to collect all of the Soul Emeralds and the Chaos Emeralds, and Blaze and Sonic do it very differently. Like I said, for Blaze you have to beat these missions, which usually involves you having to fight some of the bosses again, or completing some of the specific hidden islands, which isn't too hard most of the time. And for Sonic, you collect the Chaos Emeralds by beating the special stages, which are kind of weird in this game. Instead of running through some obstacle course, you go up against this guy.
Who the fuck is this?
Whenever you're sailing, this guy will randomly appear, who is basically like a mix between Metal Sonic and Jet the Hawk, and he'll challenge you to a race. Except not a foot race, he'll challenge you to a water bike race. Yeah, that's a real low blow. So you have to race this guy while you dodge the many bombs and enemies that try to get in your way. And it gets progressively harder the more emeralds you collect, which is made even worse because this absolute goober just starts randomly fucking cheating. And all of this builds up to make these some of the hardest special stages I've played in any Sonic game, even harder than the first game. And after you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds and all 7 Soul Emeralds, you will gain access to the true ending of the game, where it's revealed that, surprise, Eggman was behind it the entire time. Yeah, who could have seen that coming? And not just Eggman.
What's good? Eggman nigga! What?
Yes sir, the dynamic duo is back again, and they were the masterminds behind the entire game, and they took the scepter so they can, what do you know, build Eggman Land. Yeah, I don't know if they really thought this was gonna be a surprise for anyone. But anyways, Sonic and Blaze power back up into, and they face off against the final boss in the Deep Core. And just like the final boss in the first game, you can switch between Sonic and Blaze, except now you can do it on command, which is really nice because they both have their own unique attacks, with Blaze being able to shoot fireballs, and Sonic is able to reflect their attacks back at them. This does mean that they both share a ring count though, so you do have to keep an eye on that. And this actually made me die quite a few times, although this was probably just because my emulator was fucking dying. So after getting his ass beat enough, Eggman Nega gets so desperate that he was about to launch something called the fucking Planet Buster Laser. Yeah, Sonic and Blaze are confirmed Planet Busters. But before he can launch it, we are saved by fucking Marine of all people. And she distracts them enough so that Sonic can get the final blow. And then they die. So the day is saved yet again, and it's time to say goodbye yet again. And it is somewhat emotional. Yeah, I know, emotional in a Sonic game. Cringe. But it is a little emotional because although we do see Blaze again in future games, we don't ever see Marine in another mainline Sonic game again. And although she was kind of annoying throughout the entire game, cause she's literally just a 5-year-old that tagged along, but she was one of the boys, and it's kind of sad that we never get to see her again, aside from like being mentioned and small cameos and the comics if you count that. But yeah, it's a pretty nice ending with Sonic and Tails just flying off into the sunset, as funny as it looks. And that's pretty much Sonic Rush Adventure. A pretty wildly different experience from the first game that I wouldn't say is outright better than Sonic Rush. This game definitely does have its flaws. Like, I'm not too big of the whole sailing system or how much this game relies on it, as sometimes it really does feel like it's just there to drag out the game. Although I do think it was a really cool idea and it could have benefited from just slightly better execution. And I also feel like collecting the Soul Emeralds in this game is a bit more of a hassle than it was in the first game. Like, did we really need to fight against the same bosses twice just to get the soul emeralds. I mean, the bosses are good, but to make us do it twice just for essentially no reason, it's kinda dumb. But this game definitely did improve in a lot of areas. Like, the bosses are much better, and I like how Sonic and Blaze's story are streamlined into one singular campaign, and it feels a little bit less cluttered. And yeah, overall, Sonic Rush Adventure is a pretty solid Sonic game, and one that I think deserves a little bit more recognition for the hidden treasure that it really is.